Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from YourBlackWorld.com, and today I was thinking about something as we start the new year. I was watching MSNBC, and I happened to catch some of Al Sharpton's new show, Politics Nation. The show seems to be doing really well. The rating's very high, and I think it's because Reverend Sharpton is a sharp guy. He's smarter than most people give him credit for. But one of the things I can also say is that I noticed that the rhetoric has adjusted since the election. I noticed that the engagement with black folks was at an all-time high right before the president was attempting to get reelected. Much of the prodding resulted from this constant conversation about, oh, they try to take your voting rights. Dr. King died for your voting rights and all this other stuff. But when black people show up and say, well, what about our unemployment rate? What about our mass incarceration issue? What about the other things that we have concerns with? The politicians don't have time anymore. And so I think the ultimate measuring stick of whether or not the Democrats and the Obama administration care anything about you is how they are responding to you right now. So to talk about this issue, I wanted to bring in my homegirl, my partner in crime, Miss Yvette Carnell. Happy New Year, Yvette.
Happy New Year. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, very well. Now, I wanted to ask you about something. About 2 months ago, I had become very frustrated with these meetings that were happening in the White House with then jealous Al Sharpton, the usual suspects. Mark Morial would be there as well. And nothing seemed to come out of these meetings. It almost seemed that they were trying to have these meetings just so people could say that they had meetings. So, I wrote a piece where I basically said, they need to stop inviting these people to the White House because obviously nothing's getting done. Well, I want to say maybe 2 weeks later, Al Sharpton and his team responded, and they came out and said, we've got this black agenda. We got together and we wrote down all these agenda items, and now we're going to push forward with the black agenda. Because he seems to enjoy kind of occupying certain spaces, even if he's doing nothing with them. But one thing I've noticed is that since that day when they made the announcement, nothing has happened. What have you observed, Yvette, and what are your thoughts?
Well, I observed the same thing. I mean, the right before the election, there was a sort of a rallying cry in terms of black people. You have to, first of all, you have to get out and vote. You have to go vote for this guy, because if you don't go and vote for this guy, then we're going to have a problem. This is your voting rights. People die for it, just like you said before. That was the rhetoric. They were intensely targeting black people. But what you notice here is that it's almost as if Al Sharpton is just doing what he has to do. Like, there are enough black people now who say, okay, there is some credence to what, Yvette Carnell has been saying. There's some credence to what Dr. Boyce has been saying. We do need an agenda. So what they came out and did in order to respond to that is they had a meeting and said, we've come up with an agenda, which included, a lot of things which were just kind of general. Because first of all, some of it mentioned the fiscal cliff. And understand, okay, they set up this, fictional fiscal cliff, but that's not a black issue. The fiscal cliff is an American issue. And they said something about, well, it impacts black people. Well, yeah, that's true, but that's not black stuff. Like, we need stuff that's targeted issues. So it's almost as if they use, that meeting just to kind of, just as window dressing and say, yeah, we're doing something. We do have a plan. But there's no plan to put that plan in action. And quite frankly, I don't think there ever was.
Mm-hmm. I think it's funny that we often accuse black Republicans of kind of being poster children for their party, basically being puppets or being used by their party just so they can save face. And honestly, it seems that this happens also on the Democratic side, that you have these black individuals who are chosen by the powers that be to allegedly represent the black community, and effectively they don't have any power. They can't walk into a room and command much of anything because ultimately their overseers don't respect them very much. And I think that when you talk about what Sharpton and Morial and Jealous, and I'm not really as critical of Morial because I actually like Mark Morial in terms of what he's trying to do with the Urban League, but Sharpton and Jealous I have some serious concerns with. When you listen to the way they approach the black agenda, the way they approach African American issues, it's incredibly sad and timid. And you notice that there has been a dramatic shift in the rhetoric since before the election. Before the election, all the Obama surrogates were going into every black church, every black organization they could find, gathering as many black people as possible, going on every black media outlet, and literally poking at us and saying, you know what, those white people are trying to take your voting rights. Dr. King died for you to have the right to vote. You going to let them take your right to vote? And what people don't understand is that while you're getting all pumped up and saying, no, I'm not going to let them take my right to vote, guess what? They're pushing for you to fight for your right to vote so you can keep them in power. So my question is, that same rhetoric, that same energy that they had before the election where they were pushing us to go out and vote, do they have that same rhetoric now when they're trying to fight for our right to get a good education, fight for our right to have a job, fight for our right to get out of prison, when you've got all these black men in prison under laws that are no longer even legal anymore? You have the war on drugs, laws from the war on drugs that have been adjusted when they changed the crack to powder disparity, but there are people who are still in prison under the old laws. So if you are going to come into the church and fight for us to go out and vote for you, you need to be willing to go into the church to fight for us to have the right to go out and vote for ourselves by getting things that are going to actually help our community and not just help you. Yvette?
Well, I agree, but here's the issue, and this is something that all black people need to face. You know, you have to face the fact that your leadership is a representation of you, and we have to face the fact that too many of us are unserious people. And let me just say what I mean by that. People are going to say, oh, no, we're not unserious. We're just like every other population. No, we're not. Because when you look at the Jewish community, when you look at the gay community, and then when you look at other constituencies, when you look at the Latino community, these people judge their leaders by their effectiveness. It's not about how many times you march. That's wonderful. That's great. We appreciate your service. But in terms of what we're doing right here and now, everything you do is about your effectiveness as a leader. What have you moved to the goalpost? What have you achieved for us? Show me the legislation that you pushed through. Show me the legislation that you forced, the president to sign and members of Congress to develop. Show me that. And so they can show you that. The gay community can show you, look, we got Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We've been working on DOMA. The Latino community can show you, look, the leaders, they can show you, look, we got the DREAM Act. We've been working for our people. Al Sharpton and Ben Jealous can't show us anything. And yet we rally around them, as if they have achieved some monumental level of success. So it is our fault that they still are able to have that spotlight and still go to meet with the White House. In any other community, they would be finished. Like there would be someone else who's holding that job. They would have been given their pink slips, and people would say, listen, you know what, we appreciate you, you're a part of this community, but you're no longer leaders of that community. And the fact that we can't say that, we can't look at them with clear eyes and say, yeah, they may be good people, but they're not the people to lead the black community in the 21st century, that's the problem that we have, and we have to face that in our community. Everything isn't about who can give you a good sermon, who can give you a good speech, who can tell you what they used to do in the 1970s and where they marched and tell you about when they moved into Harlem, all that stuff. That's not leadership. So until we get to the point where we can understand what leadership is in terms of what leadership is supposed to get us in terms of the exchange, then we're going to be here. And I think, that black people have to face that. I do hold Al Sharpton accountable 100%, because I don't know whether he did this on purpose or whether he's just ineffective. The only thing that it tells me is that he shouldn't be the one to speak for black people, to go to the White House and speak to black people in terms of policy initiatives. He's not that guy. So I think the black community has to face that and be like, we like you, but you're not that guy.
I agree with you 100%. I think that, I think that we all are owed an explanation. We need to know what happened with your so-called black agenda that you came up with magically a few weeks ago or a couple months ago, whenever they did this stuff, which I think was just reactionary. I don't think that there was any intention to actually push this. I also want to know, are these Democrats, are these, your political buddies, Reverend Sharpton, are your political buddies going to fight as hard for us on specific issues as they expected us to fight when it came to voting and keeping them in power? It's very easy to go into a church and to invoke the imagery of the civil rights movement and to leverage that to your benefit. But we will not allow the civil rights movement to be exploited for the benefit of those who seek to keep us in oppression. And when you buy out the leaders at the very top and control them, then effectively you're oppressing the masses, and that's just something that we cannot accept. So I'm going to keep speaking on this. I know that we're going to get criticized for this, but honestly, anybody who knows anything about us knows that we just don't care. Because when it comes to telling the truth, somebody has to do it, because we're in an era where the BS just piles to the ceiling, and we can't allow this to continue because too many people are struggling. So thank you, Yvette, for your time. I
No
really
problem.
appreciate it. And thank you all for checking us out at yourblackworld.com. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.